It began like most betrayals do, quietly, in the shadows where no one else could see. At first, I thought nothing of the little things, the whispers, the subtle shifts in the way people looked at me. It was almost imperceptible, the kind of change you can convince yourself isn't real if you just try hard enough. I was blind to it, too trusting of the people I let into my life. And among them, there was one who wore the mask of loyalty so well that I couldn't even imagine the truth that hid behind it. He was the kind of person who thrived on charm. He knew how to smile at the right moment, how to laugh in a way that made you feel like you were the funniest person alive, how to slip into your circle without ever making you question if he belonged there. I welcomed him, gave him my time, my trust, my confidence. He pretended to be a friend, but in truth, he was already plotting. His envy festered silently, his bitterness curdling into something darker each time he saw me succeed, each time he heard someone speak well of me. He wanted what I had, not because he needed it, but because he couldn't stand the idea of me having it. It started small. A rumor here, a quiet word there. He'd say something about me behind my back, then act surprised when I heard about it, shrugging it off as a misunderstanding. I let it go at first, too naive, too unwilling to believe someone could be that deliberate in their cruelty. But then the cracks grew wider. Opportunities began slipping away from me. Invitations stopped coming, and the people who had once stood by me began to drift. I couldn't understand it at first. What had I done to drive everyone away? The truth revealed itself slowly, like a knife twisting deeper with every turn. He had taken pieces of my life, my secrets, my vulnerabilities, the things I had trusted him with in confidence, and twisted them into lies. He painted me as a manipulator, a liar, even a cheat. Every weakness I had ever confessed became a weapon in his hands. He spread stories with such conviction that people believed him without question. And the worst part was, he never let me see it directly. To my face, he smiled. He laughed. He acted as though nothing had changed. Behind me, he was pulling strings, orchestrating my downfall. The day I realized what he had done, it felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I had lost friendships, respect, and nearly my sense of self. He wanted to ruin me completely, to strip away everything I had built. And for a time it worked. I withdrew, broken, questioning my worth, wondering how I had let someone so poisonous into my life. He walked around as if victorious, carrying himself like a man who had won a game only he knew he was playing. But what he hadn't accounted for was that the truth has a way of clawing its way to the surface. Lies are heavy things, and eventually, even the most skilled liars stumble under their weight. I began to notice inconsistencies in his stories, cracks in the mask he wore so carefully. Others began to notice, too. The same charm he had once used to manipulate started to ring hollow. People whispered about him now, not me. His eagerness to tear me down began to expose itself as obsession. The more he tried to maintain control, the more obvious it became that he was the one weaving deception. I didn't need to lift a finger for the tide to turn. His arrogance destroyed him. In trying so desperately to ruin me, he revealed his own darkness. The same people who had once believed him began to question his motives, and one by one, they drifted away from him. His lies unraveled, and when the truth came out, that he had fabricated much of it, that he had betrayed trust after trust, he was left alone. His reputation collapsed. His name became one people spoke with disdain instead of admiration. As for me, I rose slowly, piece by piece. It wasn't easy to rebuild after what he had done, but there's a certain strength that comes from surviving betrayal. I learned to be cautious, to value trust as something rare and sacred, not to be given freely to those who wear masks too perfectly. And though the scars remain, I carry them with pride, because they remind me that I endured. He wanted to ruin my life, but in the end, he ruined his own. He paid the price not because I sought revenge, but because his own greed and envy consumed him. That was his punishment, to watch me rise from the wreckage while he drowned in the lies he had built. And though I'll never forget the pain he caused me, I'll also never forget the lesson. There will always be people like him, the classic cheats who thrive on deception, who take pleasure in others' downfall. But there will also always be the truth, waiting patiently to break through, and when it does, it never fails to demand its price. The betrayal didn't come with thunder or lightning. It slipped in silently, like poison in a glass of water, so subtle I didn't even taste it until it was too late. That's how people like him worked, never with open hostility, never with obvious strikes. Instead, they waited, they watched, and when the time was right, they sank their teeth into you with a smile still plastered on their face. He had been my friend, or at least he had played the part convincingly. He knew when to listen, when to nod, when to offer the right words to earn my trust. I gave it freely. I let him into my circle, let him see the pieces of my life that few others could. I thought loyalty was something that meant as much to him as it did to me. I didn't know then that to him, loyalty was just a weapon waiting for its turn to cut. The first cuts were shallow, so easy to dismiss. A strange look from a colleague. A coldness from someone who had never treated me that way before. A rumor I heard in passing, something so small it barely registered. But then it spread. It grew. It was like watching a storm gather in the distance, dark clouds rolling in while everyone else pretended the sky was still clear. Suddenly, I was the one whispered about in corners. I was the one people avoided, the one whose name was said with suspicion. And he stood beside me the whole time, feigning innocence. He asked me if I was okay, acted surprised when I told him how things were falling apart. He had the audacity to comfort me while sharpening the knife he had already buried in my back. When I found out, when the pieces finally fit together, the rage that filled me was so consuming it felt like fire in my veins. He had taken the trust one had placed in him and twisted it until it became my downfall. He told lies, so convincing they almost destroyed everything I had built. He didn't just want to hurt me, he wanted to ruin me. He wanted to erase me. For a while, I thought he had succeeded. I withdrew. I doubted myself. I wondered if maybe I really was what he painted me to be. That's what betrayal does. It makes you question not just the person who wronged you, but yourself. But then something inside me shifted. I refused to let him write the ending of my story. If he wanted me broken, I would make sure he saw me stronger than ever. So I waited. I watched. I didn't strike back with lies or games. That wasn't my way. I let him unravel himself. And unravel he did. The thing about liars is that they can never keep the thread straight. His stories began to contradict themselves, his mask began to slip, and the people who had once believed him began to doubt. One by one, the truth bled through his web, and once the first thread broke, the whole thing collapsed. The day he fell was quiet, not dramatic, not explosive. It was just silence, people turning away from him, doors closing, invitations never sent. His name became bitter on people's tongues, his smile nothing more than a reminder of his deceit. He lost everything he had tried to steal from me. And me? I rebuilt. Slowly, painfully, but I did. I clawed my way back, and when I stood again, I stood taller than before. He had tried to ruin me, but he ended up ruining himself. That was his price, and he paid it in full. I still see his face sometimes in my mind, smiling, confident, thinking he had won. And every time, I remind myself that in the end, the truth burned him alive. That is the fate of the classic cheat. They rise quickly, they play their game well, but in the end, they always choke on their own lies. He thought he could bury me. He thought he could take everything I was, crush it beneath his lies, and walk away unscathed. What he never realized is that when you push someone far enough into the darkness, they either stay broken or they learn how to use the dark as their weapon. I was broken once, yes, but I didn't stay there. And that's what cost him everything. By the time I pieced together the truth, he had already done the damage. Friends gone, reputation shattered, doors slammed shut before I even had the chance to knock. He walked with a smugness that burned through me, carrying himself like a king who had won a war. I remember the way he smiled at me then, sweet, almost pitying, as though he was sorry for how unfair life had suddenly become for me. He didn't have to say it, his eyes told me everything. I won. You lost. But I wasn't finished. I didn't scream. I didn't fight back right away. I played the part he wanted to see, the broken victim, drowning in shame, desperate to figure out what had gone wrong. Let him believe I had no strength left. Let him think his poison had worked. Because while he celebrated, I was watching. While he basked in his false victory, I was planning. It wasn't hard to find the cracks in his mask. Cheats like him are sloppy, blinded by their own arrogance. He told too many stories, whispered too many lies, and sooner or later, even the most devoted believer starts to wonder why the pieces don't fit. I began to plant seeds, small questions, subtle doubts. I didn't need to accuse him outright. All I had to do was nudge the truth into the light and let people's own curiosity do the rest. And slowly it began. The same way he had ruined me. Quietly, in shadows, I let his own lies suffocate him. A contradiction pointed out here. A story that didn't match there. People began noticing. Whispers shifted. Suspicion, once aimed at me, started to turn on him. And the look in his eyes when he realized it, that first flicker of panic, was worth every sleepless night he had given me. I didn't stop there. I made sure every truth he had buried about me came back out, clean and sharp, while every lie he told wrapped itself tighter around his neck. The more he fought, the more tangled he became. His allies abandoned him. The people he thought would protect him left him to rot. The world that once applauded him now looked at him with disgust. And me? I stood in silence, watching it all burn. The fall wasn't explosive, it was slow, painful, humiliating. That was the true punishment. Not quick destruction, but a slow unraveling. He didn't just lose what he had taken from me. He lost everything he thought he controlled. His reputation, his pride, his place in the world. All of it crumbled. And when he finally looked at me again, the smugness was gone. There was fear in his eyes now, the realization that the person he had tried to destroy was still standing, stronger than before, while he had nothing left. That was his price. Not because I shouted louder than him, not because I lied the way he did, but because I learned to be patient, to let his own darkness consume him. I didn't need to ruin him. I only had to guide him to the edge and let him take the final step himself. He was the classic cheat, clever, manipulative, convinced he could win forever. But cheats always forget one thing. Every game ends eventually. And when it did, he was the one left with nothing. As for me, I rose again, scarred but stronger, sharper, untouchable. And every time I think of him now, I don't see a rival or even an enemy. I see a warning, a reminder of what betrayal costs and what happens when someone mistakes kindness for weakness. He tried to ruin my life. In the end, he only ruined his own. And I watched every second of it, silent, unflinching, until there was nothing left of him but ashes.